Michael Jordan finds out a fan walked 10 miles just to watch him play, then stops the game for him. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. The sun hadn't even touched the edge of the sky when Trayvon Trey Carter tied the worn laces of his only pair of sneakers. They were cracked at the toes, soles flapping like loose tongues, but they were the same shoes he wore during every pickup game on the corner court. Today, they'd have to carry him farther than ever before. He tiptoed past his sleeping grandmother, careful not to wake her. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. The power had been out for 2 days. She'd been trying to get help, but the system always seemed to miss families like theirs. Trey didn't want to hear another "we'll figure it out." He had to get moving. In his backpack, he had one water bottle, a bruised apple, and his most prized possession, a basketball signed by his father, long gone now. It wasn't a famous name, but to Trey, that signature meant something. It meant don't quit. It meant believe. And it meant go. The outdoor MJ exhibition game wasn't anywhere close. He had no bus fare, no ride, and definitely no ticket. What he had was 2 working legs and a deep, gnawing need to witness greatness with his own eyes, just once. He started walking. Every step felt like a challenge. The concrete burned through his soles by noon, and he was sweating buckets by the time he hit the halfway mark. But he didn't stop. He passed closed stores, old churches, and neighborhoods that looked a lot like his, forgotten. Some drivers honked. One woman slowed down and asked if he was okay. He nodded without a word and kept moving. If he stopped, he wasn't sure he'd start again. Trey didn't want to just see MJ. He needed to see him. Needed proof that someone from nothing could become something. Not a social media clip. Not a second-hand story. Real. Alive. Legendary. By the time he reached the edge of the court, the crowd was already swelling. It was chaos. Cameras, kids, fans, local celebs, reporters. A DJ was blasting music over the speakers while the announcer hyped up the crowd. Trey couldn't hear half of it, his ears were ringing, his body aching. He tried to push closer but got stopped at the perimeter fence. Security waved him off, telling him he needed credentials or a wristband. "I just want to watch," he said, voice cracked and hoarse. "Just let me stay right here." One guard shrugged and let him be, as long as he didn't move any closer. Trey pressed his fingers through the fence and stared. There, in the middle of it all, was the man himself, Michael Jordan. Warm-up gear on, ball in hand, cool as ever. The crowd roared when MJ threw down a smooth one-handed dunk in warm-ups, and Trey felt it like a punch to the chest. He smiled without realizing. This was it. This was worth every step, every cramp, every second of doubt. He sat cross-legged just outside the fence, sweat still running down his temple. He took out the signed ball, set it in his lap, and watched. He wasn't inside, but he was close enough. Coach Darnell spotted him from the other side of the court. He was helping organize volunteers, water stations, and crowd control for the event. At first, he almost didn't recognize Trey. He looked drained. His eyes had that tired fire, the kind you see in players who left it all on the court. Darnell approached the staff coordinator. "You see that kid?" he asked, pointing subtly toward the fence. "What about him?" "That's Trey Carter. He walked here." "Everyone walked here." "No. I mean he walked. Like miles. Probably skipped meals to do it. That kid's got something." "Nice story," the coordinator muttered, brushing it off. "But we're at full cap. He stays outside." Darnell didn't argue. He'd seen this kind of bureaucracy before. Good people stuck behind invisible lines. Back at the fence, Trey's legs were starting to cramp. He shifted, trying to stretch without giving up his view. The game was about to begin. 2 teams of local semi-pros and guest players, with MJ suiting up as a wild card. The excitement in the air was electric, but Trey's focus was locked on just one man. He remembered his dad's voice, rough, confident. "One day, you'll see MJ play. Just don't blink." A camera crew nearby started filming a crowd segment. One of the crew members saw Trey and tilted his lens. "Hey kid," he said. "What's with the ball?" Trey hesitated, then held it up. "Signed by my dad. He said if I ever saw MJ play, I should bring this." The cameraman paused. "What's your name?" "Trey. I walked from Grove Street." "Grove Street? That's like 10 miles. Trey nodded. "Wasn't gonna miss it." The man lifted his camera again and quietly started rolling. "Mind if I film?" Trey gave a small shrug, too tired to care. The man took a few shots, then wandered off. Trey didn't think anything of it. He just kept watching the game, holding onto that ball like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Back on the court, MJ was playing loose. Smiling, laughing, talking trash in that calm, deadly way. He still had it. Every fadeaway, every pass, effortless. Even in an exhibition game, he moved like a man who never forgot what it meant to want something more than anyone else on the floor. Trey's stomach growled, but he ignored it. He'd wait this out. If this was the only game he'd ever see live, he'd burn it into memory. At halftime, the crowd buzzed louder. Phones started lighting up. Something was going around, some clip, some post. One of MJ's assistants showed him a phone mid-break. MJ squinted, watched the short video, then asked a single question. "Where is he?" Trey didn't know the shift that was happening. He didn't know who had seen what, or that half the staff around the court was now whispering and pointing in his direction. He was still on the other side of the fence, focused on the second half like his life depended on it. MJ rose from the bench and jogged to center court. The announcer thought it was part of the schedule and hyped it up, but MJ signaled for the mic himself. Everything else stopped. The noise dropped a notch. Eyes turned. And then he pointed. "Let the kid in." Trey blinked, confused. Was he dreaming? Had someone behind him done something? MJ said it again, clearer this time. "Let the kid in. The one with the ball." The fence moved. And Trey didn't. Trey stood frozen as the fence creaked open. The security guard looked at him and jerked a thumb toward the court. "That's you, kid. Go." He still didn't move. The crowd had started buzzing. Phones were up. Some people clapped. Others just watched, confused. MJ was standing at half court, arms crossed, waiting. Trey's legs finally obeyed. He grabbed his backpack, hugged the signed ball tight, and stepped through. Each footfall felt louder than the music playing. The court looked bigger up close, the colors brighter. The crowd was a blur. All he could see was MJ. Two staff members guided him to the edge of the hardwood. MJ walked toward him with a calm, curious look, half smile, half something deeper. Trey swallowed hard, suddenly aware of the cameras, the players, the silence. "You Trey?" MJ asked. Trey nodded, barely getting the word out. "Yes, sir." "Heard you walked 10 miles." "Yes, sir." MJ glanced at the ball in his arms. "That your dad's signature?" Trey's grip tightened. "He passed last year." MJ looked down at the ball, then back at him. "And you came all this way just to watch?" Trey nodded again. His mouth was dry. MJ smiled, not the media smile, but the one that had weight behind it. "Well, now you're not just watching." He turned and held up the game ball. "This kid walked 10 miles to see this game. That kind of hunger? That kind of heart? That's what this sport's about." The crowd exploded. Phones flashed. People chanted Trey's name without even knowing who he was 5 minutes ago. MJ handed Trey the ball. "You shoot. Right now. Free throw line. All yours." The buzz turned into full-on electricity. A ball boy bounced Trey a clean ball. His hands trembled as he caught it. He'd never played on a real court, never stood under real lights. His knees were shaking. MJ stood behind him with folded arms, calm and quiet. Trey stepped to the line. The world went quiet in his head. He bounced the ball twice. Took a breath. Then he shot. The ball clanged off the front rim and bounced out. There was a pause, just a second of silence, and then the place erupted again. But this time, with cheers, not groans. MJ clapped loudly. So did the rest of the players. A few even whistled. Trey dropped his head, cheeks flushed. MJ walked up, placed a hand on his shoulder. Try again. Trey looked up. I missed. First shots don't always fall. Second ones matter more. Someone rolled the ball back to him. Trey caught it this time without fumbling. He looked at MJ, who nodded once. Back at the line. No bounce this time. Just a breath. He lifted, released. Swish. The crowd roared. Players jumped. The DJ dropped a beat. Trey stood stunned, then cracked the biggest smile of his life. MJ pulled him into a side hug, raising his arm like a champion. That, MJ said into the mic, is what the game is about. After a few more cheers, MJ leaned down and whispered, "You stay right here. Watch the rest of the game from the bench. I got you." Trey nodded. He sat down at the edge of the bench, hands still trembling, heart pounding. He felt like he'd just lived a dream. Maybe he had. The game resumed, but Trey barely noticed the action now. Everything felt surreal. He was sitting courtside, next to actual ballplayers, watching MJ go to work, like nothing had happened. But something had. A camera crew circled back. A reporter leaned in. "Trey, how do you feel right now?" "I don't know," Trey said honestly. "I can't believe it." He looked at his dad's ball in his lap and rubbed a thumb over the faded signature. Back in the stands, Coach Darnell had moved closer to the bench. He stood watching, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the kid he used to coach years ago. There had been something in Trey even then, focus, raw instinct, a chip on his shoulder that never broke him. Just made him sharper. He stepped toward the court entrance, flashed his volunteer badge, and waved at Trey. Trey's face lit up when he saw him. Coach gave him a thumbs up. Trey nodded, the weight of the moment finally settling in. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The game played on, highlight after highlight, but everyone in the crowd had already picked their favorite moment. Later, after the final buzzer, MJ called all the players to midcourt for a final bow. Then he called Trey over too. "Ladies and gentlemen," MJ said, mic back in hand. "This right here is Trey Carter. Today, he reminded us what drive looks like. What love for the game really means." People stood. Some clapped. Some just watched, phones up, faces stunned. MJ turned to him. "You ever think about playing for real?" "All the time," Trey said. "You got a coach?" "Used to." MJ looked over and spotted Darnell. "That him?" Trey nodded. MJ signaled Darnell over. "You're coaching him again," MJ said without waiting. Coach Darnell smiled. "Was hoping you'd say that." MJ turned back to Trey. "You keep grinding. Next time I see you, I better see you dunk." Trey grinned. "Yes, sir." He was still smiling when he left the court. MJ gave him a ride back in one of the crew vans, and Coach Darnell followed behind. Trey didn't speak much on the ride. He just held his ball and stared out the window, reliving everything. The walk. The miss. The make. The words. All of it. When they pulled up to his apartment, his grandma was already outside, worried sick, but too shocked to scold when she saw who stepped out of the van with him. MJ shook her hand and said, "You've got a special one." Then he gave Trey a folded card. "Open it tomorrow," he said. "And tell your coach I expect an update in 6 months." Trey nodded again, still speechless. As the van pulled away, Trey looked at the card, then up at the stars. For the first time in his life, the distance between where he was and where he wanted to be didn't seem so far. Because someone like Michael Jordan had stopped the game for him. The next morning, Trey woke up before the sun again, but this time it wasn't to walk 10 miles. It was instinct now. He was sore, but his body buzzed with energy. The moment from the night before kept replaying in his head, MJ calling his name, the crowd roaring, that free throw going in. It didn't feel real. But it was. He sat up, reached for his backpack, and pulled out the card MJ gave him. His fingers trembled as he opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. Trey. Greatness doesn't come from where you start. It comes from how far you're willing to go. You've already taken your first step. Now take the next. I'm covering your training. Darnell's your guy. Don't waste the gift. I'll be watching. MJ. Underneath the message was a contact number and the logo of a private basketball academy in Georgia, one of the best on the East Coast. Trey stared at the note for a long time. He wasn't sure whether to smile or cry. MJ didn't just acknowledge him, he believed in him. By the time his grandmother woke up, Trey was dressed, shoes tied, ready for anything. She walked into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes, and found him sitting at the table, ball in his lap, card next to his cereal bowl. You okay? She asked. He nodded. Better than okay. She picked up the card and read it, eyes widening. Is this real? Yeah, Trey said quietly. She shook her head, smiling despite herself. Well, we better go find Coach Darnell. That afternoon, Coach Darnell met them at the school gym. It had been mostly unused since summer break started, dust settled on the court, but the moment Trey stepped inside, he was home. Coach walked in behind them with a duffel bag and a clipboard. No cameras now, Coach said. No crowds. Just work. Trey nodded. I'm ready. The next hour was brutal. Conditioning drills, ball handling, sprints, jump shots. Trey was out of shape, and it showed. By the end, he was bent over, gasping for air. But Coach didn't mock him. He just said, that's day one. Trey wiped sweat from his forehead. How many days? Coach smirked. All of them. They trained every afternoon after that. No excuses. No shortcuts. Trey had to unlearn habits he picked up from street ball. Coach was relentless, tightening his footwork, fixing his shot mechanics, pushing him past his limits. Some days Trey wanted to quit. His legs would cramp. His arms would feel like stone. But every time he wanted to stop, he remembered MJ's words. Don't waste the gift. One day, during a break, Coach asked, you ever think about why MJ did all that for you? Trey shrugged. Because I walked? No, Coach said. Lots of people walk. But not everyone walks with a purpose. You didn't go there to get something. You went because you believed in something. That's rare. Trey nodded, taking it in. Weeks passed, and Trey got sharper. He was still thin, still underdeveloped compared to older players, but his grit was undeniable. He hustled harder than anyone. Dove for loose balls. Shot till the lights dimmed. Coach began inviting in other players to scrimmage with him, older, faster, bigger. Trey got knocked down. A lot. But he got up every single time. The gym became a second home. His grandmother started showing up with packed meals after practice. Local kids would peek in through the windows. Word started spreading, MJ's kid was working in the gym. Nobody called him Trey from Grove anymore. They called him the kid who MJ stopped the game for. One evening, Coach brought in someone new. A scout from the academy listed on the card. Tall, silent, clipboard in hand, watching everything. Trey didn't know he was being tested that day. He just treated it like any other grind. Missed his first few shots. Then adjusted. then found his rhythm. Mid-range, corner, top of the key, he hit them all. During the scrimmage, he took 2 hard fouls but finished both plays. Afterward, the scout pulled Coach aside. Trey sat at the baseline, drinking water, trying not to stare. He couldn't hear what was being said, but Coach nodded a few times, then waved him over. "You ready for a trip?" Coach asked. Trey blinked. "A trip?" "To Atlanta. They want to see you at the academy. Next week." Trey's mouth dropped. "For real?" Coach tossed him a towel. "Pack your stuff. And make sure your jumper stays tight." That night, Trey couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the miles he'd come. From a cracked sidewalk outside a pawn shop to MJ's court to now, maybe, a real future. His grandmother sat beside him, brushing back his hair. "You proud of yourself?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah. But I'm not done." "You don't have to be done to be proud." She leaned in and kissed his forehead. "You just have to keep going." The next week flew by. Coach helped him prep a highlight reel, packed gear, and set up a schedule. When they arrived at the academy, the campus blew Trey's mind. Full courts, state-of-the-art equipment, weight rooms bigger than any gym he'd seen. The other players looked like college athletes. Some were already dunking, shooting smooth. Trey looked small in comparison. But his eyes were sharp. He wasn't scared. The tryouts started with drills, speed, passing, shooting. Trey kept up. Barely. Then came the scrimmages. He got matched up against a kid 2 years older, taller, stronger. First play, the kid blocked his shot into the stands. Second play, he stripped the ball from Trey and dunked it at the other end. People watching laughed. Even one of the assistant coaches raised a brow. Trey didn't react. On the next play, he drove again. This time, he pump-faked, drew contact, and hit a floater off the glass. Foul in the bucket. He got up, didn't smile. He just went back on defense. The next few plays, he locked in. 2 steals, a mid-range jumper, and a no-look assist. The game got tight. Then Trey hit a 3 at the buzzer to win the scrimmage. Silence. Then applause. The same scout from before walked up, nodded once, and handed him a packet. "You're in," he said. "Scholarship. Full ride." Trey stared at the paper in his hands. He'd done it. He was going to train with the best. The kid who once watched through fences was now walking through doors others never even saw. He turned to Coach Darnell, who just said, "Told you." All heart. And Trey knew deep down, this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. Trey adjusted quickly to life at the academy, but it wasn't easy. Everything was faster, stricter, louder. The coaches didn't sugarcoat anything. There were no favors, no special treatment. It didn't matter that MJ had pulled him from the crowd that day. On this court, he was just another name on the roster. And most of the other players made sure he felt it. "Yo, that's the charity case," one senior whispered during warm-ups. "Hope MJ shows up again to shoot your free throws," another muttered during drills. Trey heard all of it, but he didn't bite. He just worked. Every morning he was the first one in the gym. Last to leave. His jumper started to sharpen. His handles got tighter. The staff noticed, even if the others didn't admit it. Coach Ramsey, the head trainer, pulled him aside after a scrimmage. "You've got fight. But if you want to stay here, it's not just about surviving. It's about leading. You ready for that?" Trey nodded. "Yes, sir." "You better be. We got a regional showcase coming up. College scouts. Press. The works. I'm putting you on the second unit." Second unit wasn't starting, but it was a big deal. It meant real minutes, real eyes. And for someone like Trey, who still didn't have a ranking or a profile, it was everything. He called his grandma that night. "They're gonna let me play in the showcase." She gasped on the other end. "I knew it. I just knew it, baby. Coach said scouts will be watching. You just do what you always do, work hard and let them see you." He smiled, holding the phone tight. "I will." But the week leading up to the showcase wasn't smooth. During one scrimmage, Trey collided with a teammate going for a loose ball. Rolled his ankle bad. Swelled up like a balloon. He couldn't walk on it the next day. The trainers wrapped it. Told him to rest. "You might miss the showcase," they warned. Trey sat on the bench, staring at the court. The thought of being sidelined again, after coming this far, burned in his gut. But Coach Darnell called him later that night. "You still breathing?" "Barely. You know, MJ missed almost 2 seasons with injuries. But he came back better both times." Trey sighed. "Yeah, but I'm not him." "No," Coach said. "You're you. And if you've made it this far, a bad ankle's not gonna stop you. But only you can decide that." The next morning, Trey limped into the gym early. Wrapped tight, slower than usual, but he worked. Shot stationary jumpers. Did ball handling drills sitting down. The assistant coach saw him and shook his head, but didn't stop him. Day by day, the swelling went down. And by the night of the showcase, he could walk without limping. Not perfect, but close enough. He wasn't at 100%, but he was on the lineup sheet. The gym was packed. Coaches from D1 schools sat near the baseline. Cameras were set up at each corner. The energy was different, tense, competitive, hungry. Trey stood with the second unit, waiting for his moment. First half, the starters struggled. The other team was physical, loud, cocky. Down 10 before Coach Ramsey called timeout. Second unit, get in. Trey jogged out with a tightened brace on his ankle. Every step reminded him he wasn't fully healed. But his mind was sharp. First possession, he set a clean screen, popped out, hit a mid-range jumper. Next trip down, he stole a lazy pass, sprinted the other way, and fed a teammate for a layup. The crowd started to notice. One of the opposing players started talking trash. "You're limping, bro. Go sit down before I break the other one." Trey didn't respond. He just crossed him up the next possession and floated in a tough runner off the glass. By halftime, the score was tied. Trey had 8 points, 3 assists, 2 steals. Coach Ramsey pulled him aside. "Still got gas?" "Yes, sir. You want this spotlight, you gotta take it." Second half, the game turned into a war. Full court press, fast breaks, bodies flying. Trey's ankle screamed, but he didn't let it slow him down. With under a minute left, score tied, the play broke down. The shot clock ticked low. The ball swung to Trey. He didn't hesitate. He rose up, ankle, pain, pressure, and launched a 3. Swish. The place erupted. The other team called timeout. Trey limped to the bench, the entire gym now watching him. Coach Ramsey leaned in. "That's what I meant when I said lead." After the buzzer, Trey was surrounded by scouts, assistants, and reporters. But one person cut through the noise, Coach Darnell. He didn't say much. Just smiled and gave him a proud nod. Later that night, as Trey sat alone in the locker room, sipping water and unwrapping his ankle, one of the staff handed him a phone. "It's for you." Trey raised a brow. "Who is it?" "Check the caller ID." It read, "MJ, private line." He froze. He took the call. "Hello?" "Trey." His voice was unmistakable. "You played hurt. Showed heart. That's not in any stat sheet, but it's what makes a real player." "Thank you, sir." "You ready for the next step?" Trey's voice caught. "I think so." "No," MJ said. "You either are, or you aren't." "I am." "Good. Because I just had a talk with someone from Chapel Hill. Trey's eyes widened. They want to meet you. His throat went dry. North Carolina? That's right. Don't get ahead of yourself. They just want to visit. But you earned it. You earned all of this. The call ended, but Trey sat there stunned. North Carolina. MJ's school. One of the most legendary programs in the country. He stared down at his busted sneakers, still the same ones from that first walk. The stitching was coming apart again. But now, they felt like trophies. Everything hurt, his legs, his ankle, his lungs. But his heart was light. Because now, the world wasn't looking down on him. It was watching. Trey stood at the edge of the court inside the Dean Smith Center. The banners hung high above him, glowing under the arena lights, championships, legends, history. North Carolina blue was everywhere. He'd seen this place in documentaries, highlight reels, posters. Now he was standing on the floor. A UNC assistant coach walked beside him. This isn't a scholarship offer yet, the man said. It's a visit. But Coach Williams wanted to meet you in person. Said he's been hearing things. Trey nodded, holding in the nerves. He wasn't here to pretend. He was here to earn it. The visit lasted 2 days. Trey toured the campus, sat in on a film session, trained with the team's strength coach. Every step reminded him how far he'd come, how much further there still was to go. But during his final workout at the facility, someone unexpected walked through the doors. MJ. Same cool stride. Same presence. He wasn't dressed like a billionaire or a star. Just sweats and sneakers. He walked right onto the court, ball under his arm. Trey froze. You think I'd let you come all the way here and not check in? MJ said. Trey blinked. You still watching me? MJ smiled. Always. They didn't waste time. MJ tossed him the ball. Game to 5. Trey caught it. 1s and 2s? Old school rules. Trey nodded. No cameras. No crowd. Just him and the greatest ever. It wasn't even close. MJ won 5-2. But it didn't matter. Every bucket Trey hit, MJ nodded. Every move he tried, MJ countered. Afterward, both breathing hard, MJ leaned on the scorer's table. You've got it, he said. Still raw. Still young. But you've got it. Trey wiped his face with his shirt. Thank you. You're not going to get handed anything here, MJ added. But you knew that already. Keep showing up like you did that day in Atlanta, and this game will take you as far as you want. Trey didn't say anything for a second. Then, that day changed everything. No, MJ said. You did. They shook hands, and MJ left like he came, quiet, cool, leaving behind nothing but impact. A week later, Trey got the official call. North Carolina was offering him a walk-on spot with potential for a full ride if he earned it during training camp. It wasn't a full scholarship. But it was a door. And doors were all Trey ever needed. 3 years later, Trey Carter stood at the top of the key in his final game as a junior. North Carolina was down by 2 in the NCAA tournament, Sweet 16. Clock ticking. Coach had called a play for someone else, but when the defense collapsed, the ball found Trey in the corner. He didn't think. He just shot. Net. UNC up by 1. The building shook. They advanced. That night, social media exploded. ESPN clips. Articles about the walk-on who made it big. Broadcasters started calling him the next great underdog story in college basketball. But Trey didn't care about any of that. He cared about the quiet text that came after the game. That's how you make him remember your name. MJ. Trey went undrafted after his senior season. Scouts called him scrappy, undersized, inconsistent from 3. But one team, the Charlotte Hornets, invited him to Summer League. He packed a duffel, just like he had when he walked to that court years ago, and got to work. He didn't wow anyone at first. But he hustled. Took charges. Hit big shots late in games. By the end of Summer League, the Hornets offered him a two-way contract. Not the NBA yet, but 1 foot in the door. Coach Darnell called him that night. "You know what this means?" "Yeah," Trey said. "You're not the kid at the fence anymore." Trey's first official NBA game came mid-season, after a backcourt injury opened a roster spot. He didn't play much, just 6 minutes. Hit 1 shot. A pull-up mid-range just inside the arc. But that shot meant everything. And after the game, while reporters huddled around other players, one old camera guy spotted him in the corner of the locker room. "You remember me?" he asked. "From the exhibition game? I was the one who filmed you outside the fence." Trey's face lit up. "You still filming?" he asked. "Always," the man said. "Only now, everyone knows who you are." Trey nodded. "Took a while." The man grinned. "Worth it, though. Every step." The story went full circle when the Hornets hosted a community event at the same outdoor Atlanta court from years before. Trey, now wearing number 11 in Hornets colors, was the guest of honor. The court had been repainted. New rims. Bleachers. Sponsored by MJ's Foundation. Trey walked the blacktop slowly, eyes scanning the space. It looked cleaner, safer. But he could still see the spot outside the fence where he once sat with his father's ball in his lap, waiting for a miracle. A kid tapped his shoulder. "Hey," the boy said. "Is it true you walked 10 miles just to watch MJ play?" Trey smiled. "Yeah," he said. "And I'd do it again." The kid looked up at him, eyes wide. "You think I can make it like you did?" Trey crouched down, looked him in the eyes. "Only if you're willing to walk farther than anyone else is willing to go." The boy nodded slowly. Then Trey did something that caught the crowd off guard. He pulled the kid onto the court, handed him a ball, and pointed to the free throw line. "You get 2 shots, Trey said, smirking. "Let's see what you got." The crowd laughed, clapped, cheered. The kid missed the first shot. He looked discouraged. Trey held up a finger. "Try again." Second shot? Nothing but net. The place erupted. Trey smiled to himself as the crowd lifted the kid on their shoulders. It was happening again. A cycle. A moment. A new beginning. That night, Trey sat on the hood of his car in the parking lot, the city lights twinkling behind him. He pulled out an old, worn ball from the back seat, the same one signed by his father. Faded, cracked, barely legible. He held it in his lap and stared at it for a while. Then he looked up at the sky and whispered, "I made it, Dad." He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. Because the kid who once walked 10 miles just to watch MJ play was now the one people walked miles to see.